Hi everyone. In our previous video, we have seen what is circuit breaker. Now, in this video, we are actually going to implement circuit breaker. And to implement the circuit breaker, we have various options available. Like we can use the implementation of Hystrix, which is in a maintenance mode now. We can go for Resilience4j, and there is another option like Spring Cloud circuit breaker. So in this video, we are going to implement the circuit breaker using Resilience4j, which is a modern, lightweight, and specifically designed for Java. What exactly we are going to implement using Resilience4j? Like here, we are going to implement one order microservice, which is going to interact with the user microservice, and the order microservice want to place some order based on the user ID. And it will place the order to the user service, and in case the user service is not available, it will send some message like user service is temporarily unavailable to the order service. This is the scenario which we are going to implement. Now, to implement this scenario, we have various states available in the implementation. Like first, the order service will send the request to the user service. Like order service wants some user details for the given user ID, and the user service will return back successful user details to the order service. So this is the healthy path scenario wherein user service is returning back to the order service with the success response. So this state we call it as a closed state, and we are going to implement this state, and we are going to manually stop the user service so that it will get failed, and in that case it will enter into the open state. Like in this state, the order service will stop every consecutive request which are coming to the user service for some time period. Like we are going to define that time period like 10 seconds. We are going to configure that, and in that case, once it is entered into the open state, after that we can restart our user service. Now in this open state, like after this, once we restart it, like it will enter into the half open state. In this half open state, it will allow, we are going to set the number of attempt, like we are going to set 2 attempt. Like if the order service make a request after we restart the user service, we are going to make 2 consecutive requests. If both the consecutive requests are successful, in that case it will enter into the closed state, means it will enter into the healthy path scenario wherein order service keeps on sending the request to the user service. If the 2 consecutive requests get failed, or any of the request gets failed, then it will enter into the open state again. In that case, it will stop sending the request to the user service. So this all these states we are going to implement in this video. So I will request you all, so please do not forget to like, subscribe and share, and this video is going to become very interesting. Now let us create our user service first. So we can open the Spring Tool suite, and this is the project folder. Now we can select this third option, create new Spring starter project, and here we can give our service name, which is user-service. Type we can select Maven, and here we can select our Java version 21 for this. We can change this group as a com.user. Rest of the things we can keep as is. For description, we can say it's a user related service. And here we can add the package, we can define com.user. We can verify it once, and once everything is fine, we can click on next button. Now this is the page where we are going to define our dependencies. Like we are going to add Spring Web as a dependency. We are going to use H2 database. Next, like Spring Data JPA. Next, we are going to use Lombac dependency, and we are going to use like actuator as well, Spring Boot actuator. This much dependency is enough, so we can click on next and finish. Now we can see the project is created successfully in the left pane. Let us open this form.xml file and check whether the dependency is added as expected or not. Now this is the actuator with which we can check the health of our application. This is the Spring Data JPA. It will help us to create our entity and repository JPA repository components. And this is the Spring Web. With this, like we can make use of annotations available in this to create our REST controller, and we can use various other annotations available to create our post mapping, get mapping, and other mappings as well. This is the H2 database dependency. With this library, we can connect with our default H2 database. And this is the Lombac. With this, we can reduce the boilerplate code, and it will give us it will generate the getter setters automatically for us. And this is about the dependency we are going to use. Now let us remove this existing application.properties file, and we can create one new one with the same name like application.yaml. We can either use application.properties or YAML, both will do fine. Now here I have copied some stuff, because if we type manually it will take time, and even we may face some indentation related issues. We need to fix that. That's why I have copied it. Now next thing, like let us resolve this error which is inside form.xml. Here instead of HTTP we can use HTTPS. That's it. Now this is our configuration, application.configuration. Now our user service has port 8082, and this is the application name, and the database name we have configured as an user_db. This is the driver, this is the username, and this is the password. And H2 console we are going to enable. And these are some JPA Hibernate properties. We have made show SQL as the true. With this it will show the executed queries in the console. And this is the dialect part. Each database has its own dialect. So we are using H2 database, and it is H2 dialect database. H2 dialect we are going to use to connect with H2 database. And these are some health check related properties we have added. It will keep on checking our health of our application. And this is logging related stuff we have added. This is about the application.yaml. Now let us create our packages, what all things we require. Like first we can create our entity package. Next we can create our repository. Next is a service package we can create, and finally we can create one controller package. Now let us create one entity class first with name. We can give any name, like let's say user details, and here we can add the respective annotations like all our constructors. These are some fallback related annotations we can use, and it is an entity, so we need to add this annotation as well. Now let us add what all properties we are going to use. Like first is a user ID, next we are going to use name, next we are going to use, so better we can copy this. Next is an email, and this is the location we can add. We can save it. Now we need to add the ID annotation as well, and here we can say generated value. For this we need to add strategy, and what is the strategy? We are going to use generation type, which is auto, and we can save it. We need to add import for ID. That's it about entity class we have created. Now this is the primary attribute, and name, email and location. These are some other attributes, and we made it like auto, like for every new creation of user it will get incremented by 1. Now let us create our repository part. Now here repository, it's an interface, so we can use user repository, and here we can add respective annotation like it's an repository, and this should extend some other repository, like either we can use CRUD repository or JPA repository, and here we can define our entity object, user details and data type of primary field, which is a long, and we can add the imports. We can save it. So this is about repository. Now let us create service interface first, and we can add user. This is like user service, we name it, and here we can define what all methods we are going to use. Like first it should return all the users available in the database. We can say fetch all users. So this is the first method. Next we are going to add one user creation, like it's a create user, and we need to pass some input details. Like we can say it's a new user we want to create. Next we are going to get some user details, get user by user ID, and here we can pass the user ID as a long attribute. So this method will return the respective particular user details for this given user ID. So these many 3 methods are enough. Now let us create one implementer class. We can give name like user service IMPL, and this is the stereotype service annotation we can add to it, and this class should implement our user service interface, and we can add the unimplemented methods for this one, and here we can annotate, like we can auto wire our repository so that we can call respective methods from the user repository. Now let us call the methods which are available on user repository. First is a find all, which will return all the users available in the database. Next, like we are going to save the entity like new user. This is the input entity. With this it will create a new user record into the database, and for this like we are going to implement. So here we can create like user details, and for this we can say user details, and we can add user repository get by ID, and this is the user ID we are going to pass, or we can use find by ID. This method we can use, but actually this method is returning like it's an optional, so we can add optional. And here we can say user details optional. Now here we can check like if we can create one user details variable, let's say, which is a null at initial. Now we are going to check if user details optional dot user details optional is not equal to null, or we can say is present or is empty. Here we can say if it is not empty, in that case we are going to call, or we can use the ternary operator, like let's say if user details optional is not equal to null, in that case we are going to call get method which will return user details, or else we are going to use this we are going to return this user details which is null, and finally we are going to return this user details. We can save it. Now what we have done, like here, based on the user ID, we are returning a particular user details option, user details entry, and this is a particular user details. Here we have just retrieved a particular user details from optional, because find by ID is returning optional by default. So we have extracted the object using the get, and we are returning back. Can save it. Now service implementation is done. We are done with. Now let us create our REST controller. Like we can say it's a user controller. Now let us add our auto add. And here we can use our user service on which we are going to call the respective methods. Now we can add import for this one. Now let us add first get mapping for this one, and here we can add like users. Here we can add the response entity which will return the list of user details. In the method name we can take like retrieve all users. Here no need to pass any parameter to this method, and we can call respective method on the service dot fetch all users, and we can import the annotations. Save it. Now here we need to cast to the response entity. So response entity, like we should return the response entity. So here we can use wrap our return type inside this response entity. With this we are done with our get mapping. This method will basically return all the users available in the from the database. Now let us create one more, like which will create our new user into the database, and here instead of list it will simply return a single user details, and we can say it is a create user method which is using the post mapping. And here we need to add request, like request body, and for this we can use user details. And here we can call respective method like create user, and we can pass this request body, and we can add import for respective annotations. So this method will basically create a new user into the database, and this is like this will use post mapping, and this is the request body, and with this service method it will insert the new user entry into the H2 database. Finally we can create one more get mapping which will basically return user based on the like user ID, and here it should return the particular user details, and we can name it like get user by user ID, and here we need to pass the path variable, and we can say it's a long user ID, and we can call the respective method like get user by get ID, and this input user ID we can pass to this method, and we can save. With this we are done with our controller part, and we are done with our coding part. Now let us test our endpoints and check how it goes. First of all, we can build it, save the changes, and now we can build our application using Maven install. Now we can see our application is built successfully. Now you can cross check into the target folder, and this is our jar. Now let us run our application. We can right click and run as Spring Boot application. Now our application is running successfully on port 8082. Now let us test it by using the endpoints. Like we can use here, let's say 80, what is the endpoint 8082, and here we can select raw and JSON and we can send it. Now it is showing the empty array because we do not have any data. Let me add some data. Let's say this is the Kiran and Gmail for Kiran, and this is the location for the Kiran. Now we can change this to post because we are going to create a new user. Yes, we can see one user is created successfully. Let us add one more user, like it's a Sachin Gmail, and it's a Mumbai city. Similar way we can add one more, let's say Kevin, it's a Paris, sorry, it should be Kevin, and location it's in Paris. Now we have three records we have successfully added. We can, if we call the get method, we can see we have 3 records. Now let us check, like if we want to get the user ID second, it will fetch the second user ID. If we want to check for go for first user, accordingly it will fetch the user ID based on what user we are passing. With this we have tested all 3 endpoints in our controller, and we confirmed that our user service is working fine, and we have tested all the endpoints with the Postman. Now we have successfully created our user service. Now we are going to create the order service which is going to call this user service. Now let us create our order service. So we can right click and use this Spring Starter project, and here we can give our service name order-service. We can keep rest of the things, like here we need to change form.order, and here this is the order related service, order service details. For package we can use com.order. We can verify it once and click on next button. Now here we need to add the similar kind of dependencies as we have added in our user. This is the Spring Web. Next we are going to add H2 database. Next like data JPA, Spring data JPA, and Lombac dependency. And finally we are going to add actuator and the main dependency, which is like Resilience4j Spring Cloud Circuit Breaker. And I think and Faint client we need to add, because for to communicate, so our order service will communicate with the user service with the help of this Faint client. Now this much is enough. Now we can click on next button and finish button. Now our order service is created. Let us cross check the dependency once everything is fine. Now here we can remove this. First we can fix this error. We can use HTTPS instead of HTTP, and we can remove the application.properties file, and let us copy the file from user service and edit it here, and we can make respective changes, like our service name is order service, and port number we can give some other port like 8083. This port number should not be in use by any other service. Now here we can use now for data source we can simply, what we can do, we are not going to create a data source, we are simply going to call the user service. So we can remove this part and we can save it. Now this is H2 enabled and JPA, okay fine, and we can save it. Now let us create the packages. What all packages we are going to create, like we require, first is a client package, next is a service package, and we need like a model package as well, because what user details we are going to get, that we need to capture in some model bean, and finally we can use our controller. Now let us create our, first we can like create one model data, because this user controller, like based on the user ID we are going to get some user details. So this user details we need to create a similar kind of object into our order service inside this model. Now this is not an entity, so we can remove this entity, and rest of the things we can keep, and even this ID creation logic is not needed, and we can save it. So this is about user details, and if we want, like we can create the getter setters or using this one, and we can select all and generate. So this is about user details. Now let us create our client, so we can save it. So this is the form.xml, and here we have not added the, okay, so OpenFM is added, that's fine. Now let us create the client, and here we can create one interface for the client, and we can name it, it's an user client, let's say, because we are going to give a call to user through this client, and it's a user client. Now let us add the fame client inside this one. So we can annotate using fame client, and we can mention what is the name, and name we can say it's going to call the user service, and it's a URL we need to mention like http localhost, or we can copy the URL from here. This is for users. Now we can save it. Now next thing, like we need to add one get mapping for this one, and we can mention like what is the path, which is a user slash we are going to pass user ID as an attribute. Next it is going to return user details, and the method name is get user by user ID, and we need to pass like path variables, which will be taking the user ID as a long, and we can complete this. So this is about the fame client. We have mentioned this name user service, and this is the URL it is going to use to give a call to user service, and this is the endpoint user slash user ID, and this is the name of the service which we are going to use. Now let us create one service like user service object inside our service. You can say it's an user service. We can annotate it using service stereotype, and we can add auto-wire code, and we have injected this user client. Next thing, we can define one public method here. So public method, and here we can say it will return the user details, and we can name it like get user, and here we can pass the long ID. And here we can say user details. Same, we can create one variable, and here we can call the respective method which is available on user client. And this is the user client. So this is the get mapping get user. We need to save it. Okay, so here to access this, first we need to add circuit breaker, like, and inside that we need to mention what is the name, like we can give some name. It's an user service circuit breaker. Next we are going to define some fallback method, like let's say it's in case this method gets failed or service is down, in that case we are going to use call this fallback get user. This is the method which we are going to call. Now let us call this get user by ID, and we are passing this ID, and finally we are going to return this user details. In case if the service is not available, or due to some reason it get failed, then this fallback method will get called. So we need to mention it is like public fallback method, which is again the signature should be same, like it should return the user details, and it should take long ID, and it will have throwable T. Now in this method, when it is getting failed, the service is not available, that time we want to show some message like the service is temporarily not available. So for that reason, returning user details is not enough. So rather we need to create one user response object wherein we are going to add this user details, user response, and we can copy this user details and we can define some field like private user details. Next we are going to use one boolean attribute like is there any error, and another is a string type and error message, and we can save it. And let us add all the respective annotations. Which are there to this response, and let us create the getter setters. So with this also it should create the getter setters, but sometimes we may face the problem. That's why I am manually creating the getter setters as well. Now let us use this, like instead of returning the user details, we are going to use user response. We are going to return this. Let us create the user response object. And we are going to set, like we can say, if user details is not equal to null, in that case we are going to set the response, like we are going to set user details as a user details, and next thing like we are going to set is error as a false, and we are finally going to return this response object. Similar way, in case of failure, we are going to fallback method, it should return the response, and here we are going to set some details like is error is a true, and here we are going to set the actual message, like we can say set error message, user service temporarily unavailable, and we can add t dot get message, append this one so that it will have full message, and finally we are going to return this user response, and copy this and return, and we can save it. With this we are done with. Now what it will do, like in case of closed circuit, like let's say in case of closed state, it should return the happy path scenario, like for this given user ID it will find the user details from the database and it will set the user details to this user response, and there is no error, and it will return the happy path scenario with closed status. Now if the failure occurs, like we are going to use this, like user response, and we are going to set the error as a true, and this is the error message, and this is the message we are going to set user service temporarily unavailable, and it will return back. And after that it will return if we consecutively if we hit this, it is showing the fallback method after some 5 threshold. Once it reaches the threshold, then it will go into the open state. Like open state means all the requests will get stopped there, so this service will not receive the incoming request for some duration or time, and this configuration we have set inside this. Now here we need to set some configuration part. Now let us see. So this is the resilience, so we need to set, let me copy this part. This is the order service. Now let me replace it on this one. I am going to share the code, so don't worry about that. Here this is the order service, just we need to change the port number, and this is the resilience circuit breaker properties. Okay, so rest of the properties is as is, like this is the health check, and this is the GPA, and this is the data source. Now data source, even if we can remove this which is not needed, or if you want you can keep it. Now this property is important, wherein we have maintained our code for closed state, open state, and half open state. Like this is the circuit breaker of resilience we are going to use for user service and sliding window type. It can be a count based or time based. Now there is a sliding window size. What does it mean? Like it is 5. 5 means the circuit breaker will consider the last 5 calls when calculating the failure rate, and minimum number of calls is a 5. Next is a like minimum number of calls means how many calls must be recorded before the circuit breaker can calculate the failure rate and possibly a trip. This is the failure rate threshold in 50 and wait duration in open state. Like once it is entered closed state means happy path, it is returning the successful response. Now if there is a problem and due to which like it get failed and consecutively we hit the request and it entered from open state to the closed state, in that case it will stop sending the request to the target service. Now how much time it will stop sending request? It is the 10 seconds. After that it will half open the state and it will allow some request to pass in. If we send the 2 consecutive success request and that got the response back with success, then it will enter from half open to the closed state again. And in case if it is failed again, then it will enter from half open to the open state. That means it will again block the request which are coming if it is failed again. Now this is we have created the user service. Now let us check. Let us create one controller. In model we have this response as well. Now let us create one controller part and we can name it like it's an order controller. We can annotate it using race controller, and we are going to create only one method inside this. First we need to inject our, we are going to use like private. Here we are going to use user service because we are going to give a call to our user service. So this user service has wrapped its user client through which we are going to give a call to our user service. Now next we are going to create one get mapping, and here we can use some endpoint like place order, and here we are going to pass the user ID and it should return like we can say it's a response entity and the return type as a string. Method name we can say place order, and here we can use path variable, and for this we can add long user ID. We can add import for this. Now we are going to give a call on user service. So first we can create some user response. Let us create user response. Now we should actually use this user service dot get user. We can use this, which will be returning the user response. Now we need to check. For the time being I will return null because it is showing red. Now we are going to check if this user response, sorry, here it should be user response. We can copy it. If user response dot get error message, we can say is not equal to null. We can add it into the bracket, and we can copy this message again, and we can say if it contains some character string like what message we have set it inside our service, like if the user service temporary unavailable, we can copy this and we can check like if it has this message, that means the service is down, and in that case like it should return the response like a response entity dot, we can say status it should set, which is http status dot service unavailable, and after that we can add body part, and for the body part we can again add this user service, the same message we can set, and we can add please, and we can add some other message like add append this, please try later. Finally we are going to return, in case of this is for if the service is unavailable, it should return this status. Now if there is a like happy path scenario, in that case we are going to return response entity dot OK, and we can say order placed for user, and here we can add like we can get the details user response dot get user details, and we can save it. So what this will do, like in case of error it will go inside this if loop and it will set the status as service unavailable, and it will prepare a message, what message it want to set for the body. And this is the healthy path scenario wherein it will show some message. Now let us save it, and let us build our application. We need to save it first, and we need to do one more thing, like we need to enable the fan client here. We can say enable fan clients. That's it, we can save it. Now our one service, let us check if our service is running, user service is running. Now let us build this application and check how it goes. Can use maven install. And we can run it using Spring Boot app. Now we can see our service, auto service is running fine on port 8083. Now let us hit it and check. This is the get method, and here we can use this 8083 port number, place order, and here we are going to pass user ID as a 2. Now first check if there is a user ID for 2 using the user service. We have Sachin. Okay, fine, the record is existed. Now let us see. Now it is returning the healthy path scenario. That means it is in a closed state. It is returning the response successfully, and it is returning the response inside the controller, which is this response. That means it is returning successfully. Now let us check, like let us bring down the service, user service, so that it will show the error message. So we can now let us check by calling this again. So before that, okay, let us check by calling this. Now it is the user service temporarily unavailable. It is showing, that means it is the service is down, and it is showing the message as expected. This is the error message. Now if we hit this for 5 times, because that is what we have set into our application YAML, minimum number of calls, sliding window size 5. Now it has changed the state, like from close to open. Now from open to close, after 10 seconds it will go to half open state. Okay, now our service is not in a running state. Now let us run it and check how it works. Okay, so this is not the order service, our user service we have stopped. We need to run it again, user service, and this is our order service. Now it is in a half open state. Now in this state, if we consecutively execute 2 success requests, then it will go to the closed state again from half open state. Or if any request is failed in between 2, then it will go to open state again from half open. Now let us go to the success scenario. Let us give let us check for the users if we have. Okay, now here we have closed the user service. Now we need to add some record for this one. We can use the post, and we can add some few records, like this is the Kevin, and let us add Kiran, and this is for Kiran Gmail, and it's from Mumbai. Now we have 2 records. Let us call the get. Okay, now we are going to pass the user ID 2, for which we have record existed. Now let us check. Now it is showing the successful, the user ID 2. Now let us check the state, like we have simply executed 1 successful call. If we open click on one more request which is successful, now we have 2 requests which are successful. Now it has gone to half open to the closed state, which is working fine as per we have configured, like 2 success requests, and it has changed its state from half open to the closed one. With this, like it is working fine, and we have tested all our state from closed to open to half open, and half open to closed state again. I hope you must have enjoyed this. Now please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share, and thank you so much for watching this.